Let's move on to agenda item 5. This is our general consent calendar. So if we have items to be pulled from the consent calendar, then now is the time to do so. Or any motions.
511, 515, 54.
Member Bogus.
Sorry, I was read. I apologize. I thought you weren't going to say anything. Okay, please accept my apologies. All right, I would like to pull 511, 515, 54, and 55. Would you like me to say dot or point?
Let me repeat so I make sure I have them. 5.1.1,
Mm-hmm.
5.1.5,
Yes, sir.
5.4,
Yes.
and 5.5. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other board members? Okay,
May I make a motion?
please.
Then
go
I
ahead.
move that we approve the rest of the consent calendar.
The motion is to approve the remainder of the consent calendar. Do we have a second? We have a second. Seeing no discussion, but everything went down. Seeing no discussion, let's go ahead and vote. Member Green,
Member Green is a yes.
thank you. And we've got Member Brenton on that, so thank you. That passes unanimously. For the items that were pulled, let's begin with the first one, 5.1.1. Member Bogus, as you pulled that, I'm going to open the floor for you to speak on that, or if we're ready to move on, but Member Bogus.
I just think my question is, what exactly does this do? Because I've read the documents and I don't see the purpose in it. So maybe somebody can help me get more enlightened, please.
Sure. Let's just pause for a second. Scott, please.
Sir, we can't see which, so 5.5 is which contracts, or
Thank you. That's a great question. So this is
Yeah.
5.1, and this is the first contract. This is the state cooperative contract purchase. The description, Lightcast software renewal.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Come on up. Or well. So we have staff coming up, if that's okay with the chairs. Over.
Yes, please. Let's press a little speaking. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, Wendy Morton, Career and Technical Education Coordinator. And the purchase for Lightcast software is actually access to data analytics around career outlook, employment outlook, skills that are needed in our Utah economy. There's a lot of very specific information that's there that we can use to research our pathways. The software is used so they are licenses that will be used internally, but also will be made available to our region planning for career and technical education throughout the state. That's the intent.
Thank you. Member Longacre.
Thank you for pulling these contracts. I like to talk about them, and thanks for chatting on the phone. And I also question this, but when you listed off all of the districts that use this, that was valid for me to say, okay, we probably do need this. And maybe you can discuss how many districts really do use that for all of us here.
Sure. So right now in throughout the state, we have each of our LEAs are grouped into what we call planning regions. They plan together with their post-secondary partners Many of the post-secondary institutions have already had access to this, but not our secondary partners. The secondary folks would be all of our LEAs because they've asked for access. So we have some that have asked for access individually, but some that are going to share it within their region for planning. So essentially, it would touch all of our LEAs at the secondary level that have programs grades 9 through 12.
Member Carey, and then Vice Chair Wood.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm familiar with Lightcast. We use it regularly in my place of employment. And my question would be, doesn't the Department of Workforce Services also provide this data in terms of high demand jobs where needs are? So I'm wondering, what data are you seeing on Lightcast in terms of employment and these CTE related jobs that the Department of Workforce Services isn't meeting those needs?
Right. So the intent is not to use this software on its own. We also use the Department of Workforce Services data. In Lightcast, one of the pieces that is included is also some outcomes and some information tied to degrees and programs that students are going into, as well as specific skills that aren't really found on the Department of Workforce Services data that we receive. So some of the very specific hands-on type of skills that are used in a job there's a lot more description within Lightcast that we've been able to identify, and it works in conjunction with the Department of Workforce Services data.
Follow up.
So I'm still not certain what additional data would be provided outside of data that the education space already owns or has access to. I understand this will be more convenient because it's packaged together nicely, but I guess my question is, what specific data is on Lightcast that our districts don't currently have access to? Thank you, Chair.
So I think part of it is actually the access being all centralized. That's the feature that comes within Lightcast, and just the ease of putting the different data points together. So really, as a tool, saves a lot of time for them, as well as allows them to look at it together, if that makes sense, without having to do a lot of pulling from multiple sources and viewing those and doing the analytics without the tool.
Vice Chair Wood.
As we move forward into the next phase of the first credential implementation, will this help our LEAs and those regionals to look for those high impact jobs that may tie into some credential that our high school students could have? Will this be helpful to them at all, or is it a separate?
Yes, it would correlate with that work.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Wood.
I move that the board adopt or approve the SHI International Lightcast software renewal contract.
The motion is that the board approve the SHI International Lightcast software renewal. We have a second from Member Booth. Would you like to speak to that, Vice Chair Wood?
I just know that having served all summer on the first credential, that any support that our LEAs can get as they move forward on this. It's been I've been on a subcommittee specifically looking what LEA needs are, and if this is one area that can help them, we need to give what they can to be successful.
Okay, seeing no other lights, the motion is to approve the SHI International contract. And let's go ahead and vote. Member Green?
Member Green is a no.
Thank you. Looks like that passes 12 in favor, 3 opposed. Those opposed being Member Green, Member Carey, and Member Bogus. Once again, Member Bogus, I'm going to turn to you as you pulled the next agenda or next item from consent 5.1.5. Would you like to comment on that? You don't have to. I just want to give you the proper time here. Go ahead.
No, I'm happy to let other people ask. I would like to vote no on this, and if other people have questions, I'm happy to discuss my reasoning, but, yeah, I'm not in favor.
Okay. I don't see, oh, Member Earl.
Yeah, just seeking some clarifications. This was, if I understand this right, this is a continuation of a piloting or money that was allocated a couple of years ago for the work-based learning. Am I understanding this right? And this is just an expansion of that? I just want to.
I believe that you are correct. Talia, do you want to
I
respond?
just want to make sure it's what I think it is, right?
Yeah. No, she happened to
So-
be in the back,
Oh,
queued
luck-
up,
I
ready
know,
to go.
we're lucky.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Talia Longhurst, Director of Career and Technical Education. Yes, that's exactly what this is. A few years ago, the board prioritized some discretionary money to help us kick this off and do a pilot program. This is an extension of that and an expansion of that. You're correct. It now will serve all secondary students in the state of Utah.
Okay, and I'm just curious, our original use of this was how many schools were impacted by that, roughly? I mean,
I'm going to put out a guess at around maybe 15. And so now we're moving to all.
okay, which is maybe, what would you say?
Well, all secondary schools. So
Right, but, right, that's 100%. What was the
Correct.
previous, maybe 20%?
maybe 20.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other lights, there's no motion before us. Is there a motion to be made? Vice Chair Bollinger.
I would like to make a motion that the board approve item 5.1.5.
The motion is to approve agenda item 5.1.5 or the fifth contract. Is there a second? We have a second. Would you like to speak to that? No? You don't have to. I'm not going to force anybody to speak. I don't want to speak either, if that makes any difference, but here we are. So, board members, seeing no lights, let's go ahead and vote. Member Green?
Member Ferguson, no.
Thank you. And that passes 12 in favor, 3 opposed. Those opposed being Member Carey, Member Green, and Member Bogus. Our next item that was pulled was agenda item 5.4. Member Bogus?
Yeah, sorry, I need to pull it up, Chair. Well, if I have the ability to pull it up. Yeah, so I just have a couple questions for staff, if that's okay. Would you like me to ask them and then determine staff?
Yeah, let's
Or get the
go ahead
staff
and
and then ask the question?
let's ask the question, see if it can be answered here or if we need to pull somebody.
So as I look at the agenda memo, this is some outside organization, and I've read all the documents, but basically we're asking for matching funds. It's someone else asking the board for money. Is that what I'm? Well, and I understand.
I'm getting the short answer is no.
So then why does it say it's asking that the board provide the required 25% in-kind match?
We're going to get, I think we're going to have a staff member. We're just figuring out which one.
And I understand what in-kind means, but I also understand that when we're doing one thing, we can't do another thing.
Sure. Okay. Please.
Kim Loveland, Director of Child Nutrition Programs. So with this particular grant, and this is similar to other grants that we've been doing with Farm to School, so we do an in-kind contribution. Right now we have a part-time FTE that works with our Farm to School programs, and she coordinates with the specialist at the Utah Department of Food and Ag on that. So it's similar to what we've been doing as far as the past few years, is an in-kind contribution. So part of her payroll goes towards that. And then we also dedicate funds as part of our CMP budget to support some of that. But Department of Ag can't apply for this grant without us. And this funding is also supporting the specialist over at Department of Ag.
Nobody else thinks that sounds super weird.
Do you have a question or
Well,
go ahead, follow?
I don't know. I have lots of comments. I think it's weird that our staff is doing the work of another agency. Is that how I'm hearing that correctly? They want our staff to do the work so that they can get the money?
They also have a full-time FTE that's working on this as well. It's a shared role, and in order for us to apply for the grant, the Board of Ed needs to be part of the grant, a partner on the grant.
Okay.
We'll move on. You can process, think, whatever you want to do. I've got you can. I just got a cue here. Yeah, Member Lear. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that this is what I think it is, because I remember a more extensive discussion a year ago or two, and at the time I remember thinking, how could we not support something that supports local farmers? And isn't that true? Doesn't it? It supports our local farmers, and it also contributes to good nutrition for children. Is that accurate? And so for this amount of money, we accomplish both those things, and that does not trouble me. And I just wanted to make sure this is the same one that we belabored a year ago. That was, to me, it just seems obvious that of course we would want to support the nutrition opportunities that children have in schools. So that's the direct relationship to school. And then it also has the benefit of supporting local businesses and farms. So yes, I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks for that opportunity.
Thank you. I've got Member Earl, then Vice Chair Bollinger, and then back to Member Bogus. Member Earl.
Yeah, and I think I heard the question working on this with a question mark. This, from what I understand, is providing nutritional purchasing from local farmers, or specifically fruits, vegetables, that kind of a thing, and then making sure there's some kind of a connection or accessibility for schools to get that. I know I've talked with Representative Chevier a few times over the last year, and she too has engaged with the federal government on a lot of things, and this is one of those, is getting healthier foods into our schools. To me, this, if it were about equal pay or something like that, it's not about that. It's about trying to access the resources that are available in Utah that are nutritional resources that can easily be provided for schools. At least that's the way I understand it. And that is something I am thinking would be a great thing to have, versus processed foods as our mainstay.
Okay, I believe that answered Vice Chair Bollinger's question. So back to Member Bogus.
I think my final question is, considering the requirements of this grant, do any of these providers or the schools have to change how they operate or interface with anything at all? Do they have to buy new equipment? Do they have to whatever in order to participate in this?
That's a great question. Thank you. We are building this off of the success that we had with the local Food for School grant, and that was focused on getting more local beef and bison into the schools. And because of the overwhelming positive response on that, we are expanding this into the fruit sector. And so it will focus on cherries, peaches, and apples. And we've already had some success with apples already. And so again, we're focusing on fresh on this particular item here. So we don't anticipate a whole lot of changes that the schools would need to have as far as storage and things like that. Obviously, cherries have and peaches have a shorter shelf life than your apples, but again, the purpose of this is to see what works, and as a pilot of this, to expand it throughout the state.
Okay, so may I?
Follow.
So, with respect,
Mhm.
definitely, that didn't really answer my question. My question is, do these vendors have to change what they're doing in practice in order to participate in this grant program? Do they have to have a certain software for their finances? Do they have to change what they're harvesting in? Do they have to use a certain chemical for, or no chemicals when they do insecticides or pesticides or whatever that might be? Are there regulations that change how they function in order to participate, excuse me, in this program?
Not that I'm aware of. They're already selling commercially. And so that would just be building into the school sector. And we would be helping with the procurement process, which has been a big help to the schools when we
Okay.
help with that.
All right, thank you.
Does that help?
Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. So I read this and reread it because I love the premise, but you know, we talk because I thought it was about great, we're going to get this money and we can buy local peaches or apples with it. But then as I'm reading it, I never see where that actually happens. And you know, under project purpose, it lists 5 purposes for this grant, and clocking in at number 5 is not even buy local food, promote local food purchasing. So when do we actually hit the objective of buying local fruit for our schools? And it says right here, what will the funding be used for? The funding will be used to support schools in meeting the Buy American thresholds. Fantastic. But then it says the grant project will focus on. So its focus is connecting school food service programs with Utah fruit growers. I don't understand, like, is that the part where we're actually buying the fruit? Because it doesn't say that. It says that we're making these connections, and I would think that that should be done locally, right? Isn't that best left in the hands of local districts connecting with their local farmers instead of saying, hey, we got to send this all up to the state, and then the state's going to put 4 other priorities according to the project purpose, 4 other priorities before? Remember, not purchasing local food, but promoting local food purchasing. So how much of this money is actually going to be used for purchasing, dollars to local farmers to get their fresh produce or fruits into our schools? Do we know that? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Kim, please.
Yep. So we do have some money set aside separately from this to help with local food purchases. For this school year, we have $260,000 that we will be using, that schools can request that funding for. For this particular grant, it's building that supply chain and that methodology that we've got, so that we have a supply chain and processes in place, connections in place, so that we can do that contract work for between the schools and those producers, and really get a good solid system in place that will work within those 13 regions that we've mentioned in the grant application. Again, this is still in draft mode. We have not applied for the grant yet. We're waiting for the board's approval on that. So if there are things that you guys would like to see as part of that grant proposal, we're open to that as well.
And may I? You said something interesting. You said you haven't applied for the grant because you're waiting for this board's approval prior to doing so. Why wouldn't you just go out and apply for the grant? Why wait for this board's approval?
My understanding is if anything over $100,000, we have to bring to the board.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, here on the bottom of this page, it says recruit fruit growers across Utah to assess their capacities to supply schools and support their inclusion in state contracts. That's the supply chain part.
Mm-hmm.
And my question there is, when we say the capacity to supply schools, under this grant, would a farmer have to be able to supply peaches to all schools in Utah in order to qualify for funds? Is it enough for that local peach grower in northern Utah just to be able to supply the school up the street or the district? What is the parameters of that? I want to make sure this is going to local farmers, small farms, rather than big agri. So could you help address that?
Yeah, and we had some success with that with the local farm to school grant too with the beef. We worked with small producers in the state and assessed their capacity and then established that supply chain. So we would model that for this particular grant too, because again, we do want to support that small local farmer, see what their capacity is, see what we can do to get that in schools. But it is focusing on those local small farms. Long term, we would like to have that food hub built so that people can contribute to that, and then we can distribute it that way too. But
That's
yeah.
fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Member Reel.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this, and I'm hoping that we can get the grant. I know that the legislature has prioritized helping improve our child nutrition and school lunch debt that we have accrued, and I think this is a fantastic way to support local Utah farmers. So, thank you.
Thank you. We just a reminder, we do not have a motion on the floor. We were just talking about a pulled item. Seeing no additional lights, is there a motion to be?
My hand is raised.
It is? Okay, Member Green, please.
Sorry, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'll turn my camera on here. Yeah, I had questions about this the last time that we discussed this. I think just a couple questions is how much has been spent so far on purchasing actual food? Do we have any receipts thus far? And how much has been spent on promotions? So there are two different line items. I think kind of Member Carey was addressing that. The other thing that I'm wondering is when can we have access to the contracts that will be required from sourcing from these farmers? And if I may expand on that question real quick, one thing that we see within the building realm is that certain things can be carved out in industry. So for example, plumbing, when you contract with the state, they can require specific measurements in order to approve certain parts. In doing so, it creates the demand for that item to go down, which means the price goes up because they have to fall into a very specific design specifications, and it makes what we see that industry become bloated and very expensive versus that competitive marketplace that can exist outside of government contracts. If we are choosing to tip into the realm of food, we need to see those contracts. And I think Member Bogus was bringing that up and trying to touch light on that. There will be requirements for these farmers to meet specifications, capacity, health code, pesticides. There's a whole list. I would like to see that. We need to understand what that looks like. Again, and I'm just going to reinforce, we know that building schools is very, very expensive. We know that when you contract with government to build anything, those pieces are developed and they become very, very expensive. My experience is that this will also eventually hit the food realm, which makes me very hesitant to move forward until we see that information and we can talk about it, not just theorize. I want it in writing. When can we see that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Member Green, that was a lot here. Can you?
It was. This is a lot.
Yeah,
It's a big subject.
So your questions then, can you lay those out for us?
I think I would, yes. I did want to know what's been spent on purchasing so far, how much has been spent in comparison to what has been spent on promotion. And I would like to know when we will see the actual contracts and specifications required from farmers that would be partnering through this government program.
Okay. And I don't know if we have those answers offhand. Kim, I'm looking at you. If you can rattle
If
those
we
off, or
don't,
if
I
you
would like
need,
to make a motion.
that's fine. So Kim, any thoughts on that?
Well, as far as amounts spent, like, we haven't spent anything on this grant yet, right? Because we haven't been approved for that. But
Sure.
with the local farmers school, we spent 2.5 million on beef. Last year, we also had the $250,000 in state funds that we spent or gave schools for local. So, that continues.
Okay.
As far as promotions, I'd have to look that up. And as contracts, we would ball that off of the local farm to school contracts as well to make sure that we have some good prices for our schools, but then are also facilitating, the needs of the producers as well, and kind of working with that. But we'd be happy to share those drafts and those contracts with you guys. It's not a problem.
Okay. Member Green,
Thank
I'm
you.
going to go back to you. You said you potentially have a motion.
Yeah, I would like to move that we wait to vote on this until we have been provided the contracts that are presented to those that are seeking to partner. So we have and I'll make that
So
motion.
the
So bring
motion,
that back when we have the contracts that these farmers are required to sign. And I'll speak to it in a minute if I get a second.
the motion is to not sign this contract at the current time until contracts with farmers are presented to the board. Is that correct?
Yeah, to table this until we have the contracts. And
Okay.
we have time to review the contracts.
Do we
It
have
will be required.
Okay, do we have a second? We have a second. Back to you, Member Green.
My argument here is that we're maybe putting the cart before the horse. I think in order to be fully informed with something, that we need to look at all the parts. This is a long-term action. It has long-term consequences, good or bad, and I obviously the broader overview, I think it's good. But when it comes to contracting our food sources with government entities and doing so before we even understand what that requirement is, I think is negligent, and we just need to give it due process.
Okay.
It'll be very helpful.
Sure. Point of order, Member Bogus.
Yeah, with respect to Member Green, her motion is out of order because nothing is on the table. No motion has been made. There's nothing pending.
There's no motion, but there's nothing on the floor, and she's requesting, yeah, there's no vote to postpone, but Member Green's motion was to hold off on signing this contract. And I know that she later on is like postpone, but obviously you can't postpone something that's not there. But if I'm understanding correctly, she's in referencing this contract. She's made a motion to hold off until we have more information. So with that, Member Green, is that correct?
I'm trying to figure that out as well. I think just generally speaking, if we are being asked to approve this, and so I was waiting and maybe I'm just presenting that wrong. What I'm asking is that we just need more information. We're approving something we don't know what it is.
Well, and I think to Member Bogus's point, we're not approving anything. There's nothing on the floor to approve.
Okay. I am open for some guidance then.
Well, guidance, I don't know how to help you. I know. Yeah, Scott, please.
So perhaps I can help. So what is in front of the board right now is a grant application. It's not a contract, but because it's over $100,000, we bring grant applications to you because that's your threshold that was established by the board. And Kim can correct me if I'm wrong, Chair, but this, if the board approves this, you're just approving us to apply for the grant. But then it doesn't mean the grant will get awarded or, but if it does, then I think it might help to remind the board and Board Member Green what exactly the money will go towards. Could Kim do that right now, if that's okay? Because I think that's the context we're looking for here. But
so for clarity, we're not spending money. We're not spending USBE money. We're applying for the grant, and if the grant is awarded, then that money will go to. And I think we've asked that question.
Okay, well,
where
right,
where does this money
Okay.
go?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's been answered already. So
Okay.
Kim, if you don't mind, we won't have you repeat that. But that's. Thank you for bringing us back to the. It's under. I guess it's not under contracts, right? And to your point, Scott, it's agenda item 5.4. It's not under contract. So this is the staff saying, hey, we're interested in this grant. This is money that we could obtain that won't cost us anything, but that could be helpful to our programs. That's what I'm understanding, Kim? We would be a partner, yes. Yes, okay. With that, Member Green, Member Green, check your text messages. How's that? Okay, I'm going to move then to, is it a point of order? I've got lots of questions, or people with questions, I mean.
If it's not the appropriate way that this was done, I'm okay to withdraw, and I apologize.
Is there any opposition? It's been seconded. Is there any opposition to this? I think as we learn more, I think Member Bogus is correct. It's probably not in order. So let's move forward. I've got Member Lear, Vice Chair Wood, then Member Kelly. It's been noted that she was before you, Carol, but you already have the mic.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to make the motion and then speak to it if I can. I would move that the board approve the Child Nutrition Program staff to partner with the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food by committing $125,000 in-kind match for the FY26 Patrick Leahy Farm to School grant.
The motion has just been stated. It's on the board. Do we have a second? We have a second. Back to you, Member Lear.
I think somebody said something about carts and horses a minute ago. I think first we have to apply for this grant, and before the CNP staff can apply for the grant, that staff needs the board's approval. I would absolutely support this, and then I think that would begin the process of developing contracts with those suppliers that LEAs, as I understand it, may or may not use. There may be some statewide application, there may be local application. Application not in a paper sense, but more in terms of an opportunity for using these products. So I think what we're looking for is the very beginning of this process to try to get the grant that will then support the apples, that will then feed the kids, that will improve their nutrition. And I think giving us the opportunity to see if we can get the grant is the most important thing first.
Vice Chair Wood.
Yeah. So just to clarify, if we were to mimic this with our grant or our beef grant that we have, every contract that we have done with farmers or ranchers who are doing this beef has come to our board. We have seen every contract that will go forward. Until the grant is applied for and approved, there will be no contracts because there will be nothing to do for us to see. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, Member Kelly.
Do we have, could you provide us with dates of deadlines? When is the application due? When is the grant application due? Because I know right now there's potentially some a motion or a proposed motion that would table this for another time, but if there's deadlines, application deadlines and things like that, that may impact that. Are there deadlines of when an application needs to be submitted?
Kim, do you have a response to that, or?
Yeah. The application is due December 4th, which is next board meeting day.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Member Bogus?
Yeah, I would move to postpone this until the December board meeting.
Just found out that
No, we can't apply for the grant. We can
There
approve it
is
early in the
a-
day and they can.
There is
submit
a
it later.
motion to, there's a motion on the floor. We have a potential substitute motion to postpone. Is there to postpone to the December 4th board meeting? Is that correct, Member Bogus?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, speak to that, Member Bogus.
So I would disagree respectfully that there are down chain events that those documents are ready to go. They're not just ethereal. They don't just manufacture them in case. They're there in chain. If this, then this, and this is the document that makes that happen. And if we don't have access to that, and my biggest concern is the regulatory things that when you are in farm and ranch industry and you have to change your entire the way you engage with your animals, the way you engage in your operation to get a contract from the government, it's not right. And it's everything from how they're fed and how they're finished to the number of vaccines they get. And not always are these things, I mean, we keep saying the best food for our students, but a lot of the government regulations in this area are not good for our students. And so I think we need to look at what those things are before we get any further down this road. Thank you.
Member Carey, to this motion to postpone? Okay. Seeing no other lights, let's move forward with the motion, the substitute motion to postpone. Let's go ahead and vote.
Member Green is a yes.
Thank you, Member Green. Okay, that motion fails. 12 against, 3 in favor. Those in favor being Member Carey, Member Green, and Member Bogus. Back to the original motion, which is, I believe, that the board approve child nutrition program staff to partner with the Utah Department of Agriculture on food by committing $125,000 in-kind match for the FY 2026 Patrick Leahy Farm to School grant. Member Carey.
So I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, but with reservation. And it was said earlier in this meeting that, this is free money. And I don't look at it that way. We need to commit as a board, and what we're really voting on is not just to apply for the grant, but it's my understanding that by applying for the grant, we're also required to cough up $125,000 in-kind match. So to the extent that anyone at this table believes we're just getting free money, that's wrong. We have to commit, I believe it's 2 staff members, that a portion of their time will now be dedicated to the oversight and monitoring of these funds and the processing of these funds and the maintenance of this program. So I also have concerns that I still don't know how much of this money is actually going to go to buy peaches and apples, or whether it's just enriching an existing bureaucracy around farmers. And that would be tragic. So I'm going to support this, but I'm also going to be working with Kimberly and Michelle in between now and the next board meeting to get a better understanding of how many of our ranchers have benefited from that program? Because I've heard how much money we've spent. I still don't know how many ranchers actually benefited from the money that we spent on that program. And to the extent it's a great number, that's fantastic. But I just have concerns because if that number was mentioned, I apologize. I don't remember that number being shared when we talked about the beef aspect of this program. But I don't know how many of those benefit, and I don't know how many of those were true, family ranches versus big ag. But so I'm going to support moving this forward because to the extent it will help our small farmers get fresh fruit to our schools, that's a good thing. But just because that's a promise doesn't mean that that's going to be the reality. So thank you, Chair.
Member Hall.
It sounds like if we were to postpone this, we still wouldn't be able to see what the fruit contracts look like until we apply for the grant and it's approved. But after talking to Kim, and it sounds like the beef program was similar, that she said they could get the documents from that beef program, the contracts, as soon as tomorrow, for us to take a look at. So if that's something that we'd be interested as a board in seeing those contracts to kind of see how those are laid out, because it sounds like the fruit contract would be similar, they could get that information as soon as tomorrow for us to be able to look at.
Thank you.
Yes.
Member Booth.
So my question is, aren't those two individuals that Board Member Carey mentioned that are working, that will be working on this, aren't they working on that anyway? They may be looking for cherries and peaches out of Washington or whatever, but they're going to find the food somewhere to feed our kids. I think that this is just a focus of their efforts to make that happen locally rather than someplace else where we can bring it in from California or Mexico or whatever it is. And I think this is just a great opportunity to not only benefit from the work that they will do, focusing on local providers, but also to be able to have cooperation from the Department of Agriculture and their people that will be working hand in hand with them, and we get their services in cooperation with our two women who are working on it in order to make it happen more efficiently or more effectively and get the food that we're looking for to the kids in our individual schools. That's what I'm seeing. So I don't understand what I'm missing. It's not free money, but it is a cooperative effort, and we're benefiting from the staff in the Department of Agriculture who are working together with our staff members to make this happen as efficiently and as quickly as possible. I might be missing. I'm just asking, is that right?
Is that right? Who are you asking?
Whoever knows. I have no idea. Matt, if you have,
I could say yes for the sake of time, but if that's the answer you want to hear, and if you don't, I'll say no for the sake of time. But yeah, okay. Member Carey, go ahead.
If I may, because Member Booth brings up a perspective I didn't think about, which is, are we really talking about the same staffers? We're just reapportioning their time. Is that, I believe that was the essence of Board Member Booth's question. And if it was, I would like to know the answer to that because I assumed it would be in addition to. But if it is really just a reallocation of time, I mean, they say there's no free money, but maybe it is free. No, but thank you, Chair.
Kim, please. Yeah, thank you.
So we have a farm to school specialist right now in child nutrition programs that works directly with Utah Department of Food and Ag. And then they also have a specialist. So we've got those two individuals. And then with reports and things like that, like I take a little bit of time, and some other people take some time, but it's not a new position. It would be existing positions and just aligning that work to continue. And then the UDAF specialist position, we have that funded with a current grant, and that ends in September of 26. So this would also help extend that position over at UDAF.
Follow-up, Member Carey.
Thank you. So, 'cause I know we're talking about the same staffers, we're just reapportioning their time. Is that, I believe that was the essence of Board Member Booth's question. And if it was, I would like to know the answer to that because I assumed it would be in addition to. But if it was, I would like to know the answer to that because I The time that you spend on this program, I believe it's up to 25% of your time, whatever the grant requirement is. Are you required to log that time uniquely when you submit your hours? Or how are we, if you're supposed to put 25% of your time into this program, are you estimating or are we actually saying at the end of the week, I work this many hours on this particular program? How are we tracking that?
With grants that we are using to pay for FTE time, we do track that, yes. That's part of the grant management process.
Okay, so this time would be clocked specifically for the management of this program?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Member Green's been waiting, and then I've got Vice Chair Wood.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify just a couple questions. It was mentioned that we've done $2.5 million in beef and another 250,000 given to local farmers. Is that given to local or sales of local farmers, say for apples? Could you help me clarify that, please?
Kim.
Yes. So we have set aside, last year we set aside $250,000, and then schools requested that funding from us, and they provided documentation of how much local food produce that they purchased, and then we sent that money back to the schools.
When they apply for that and they contract with so when a school decides to apply for that grant to purchase from local farmers, those local farmers have, in essence, signed a contract to be a distributor. Is that correct?
Depending on how much is being purchased at the schools, right, they have their own procurement processes and thresholds that they have to follow. So some of that might be small purchases, some of it might be on RFP. Most likely those were on a small purchase basis right now, just because of the volume it would take to supply a whole school district.
So did they have to sign paperwork in order to sell their produce to a school?
Again, depending on what the procurement thresholds were at each LEA, there would have been quotes and there would have been some procurement documentation in place, depending on what type of procurement that they had to do in order to acquire those products.
Do you know, do you have record of that?
We could provide that to you based off our last year's documentation.
I'm only asking these questions again just to get a better idea of what is required for these farmers to work with this government entity.
Yeah, I would
So
suggest I would suggest that, as Member Carey mentioned as well, you know, he mentioned that he's leaning towards voting for this, and that he will continue to follow up afterwards. I would suggest that you kind of maybe work with him on that and get those answers as well. I'm not sure if we're going to get all of that information right now, but I know you have some additional questions. Is that fair to say?
I'm just trying to line up. We're just being told that there's not contracts, but yet there's contracts for any procurements, RFPs, or small purchases. So I'm just looking maybe for more of a solid answer, especially if I'm going to vote for something that requires those things in the next step.
And yeah, again, I believe that's what Member
That's all I
Carey is.
have, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Vice Chair Wood.
Thank you.
So, as I recall, sometime last year, and maybe you can remind me of the date, we recognized the state's farm to school participants in this very meeting. We were told that the grant had roughly provided $1.9 million to purchase local food. The program had set up statewide contract for 6 local producers of beef and bison to reduce administrative burdens for local education agencies. That we had allocated to 135 school districts, charter schools, and private schools for local beef and bison, and that reimbursements would continue through April of 2025. And apparently, board members praised the educational components of Farm to School. The program connected students to local farms, engages classroom learning aligned to core standards, and offered culinary trainings, and that there were 13 regional movement building hubs to make this happen. Has any of this changed? Would any of this change with this current grant application?
Again, we're building off of that prior grant that we did. We did finish out those distributions from that local food grant. So yeah, we're just building off of that and just going into the new sector of fruit growers.
Member Carey?
To the extent it was suggested that because we approved something in the past, we are not allowed to evaluate it and assess whether or not it's working or the value is there, I just don't believe there's any merit to that argument. I think that we are asking the right questions, which is, was what we approved effective? And with the chair's permission, I would like to ask staff, do we know how many ranchers actually benefited from the money that was spent? I think Board Member Green, was it 2.5 million, 2 million? I don't know the number that she referenced. 6 ranchers? And how much money was spent?
Is that
I wrote down 2.5 million.
So if I understand correctly, 6 ranchers benefited from 2.5 million, and I'll ask this rhetorically, but were those ranchers even in Utah? And how many of those were affiliated with the same, ranch? And I think those are exactly the questions that we need to look at when we say, what are the costs and what are the benefits? I think we could have done more for the ranchers if we just took the money and bought the beef. Thank you, Chair.
The motion before the board is that the board approve child nutrition program staff to partner with the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food by committing $125,000 in-kind match for the FY 2026 Patrick Leahy Farm to School grant. Let's vote. Member Green?
Member Green is a no.
Thank you. That passes 13 in favor, 2 opposed, those opposed being Member Green and Member Bogus. We have one more item that was pulled from consent. 5.5 was pulled. Do you want to speak
I have
on
one
that?
question
Sure.
about this. I want to know where is the training coming from? Publicly, I just want to make certain that this training is not coming from a third entity and that we are subjecting our teachers to a constitutional secession. So somebody else drives the training inside our schools instead of the Board of Education.
Do we have a response for that? Leah?
Leah Voorhees, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. Chair, may I ask Board Member Bogus, you're talking about the para-educator behavior support training? Is that the question?
Yes, I believe so. I did not pull this one up because I thought I had it all in my head, but I believe
Gotcha. Okay. So this training will be provided by USBE staff once it has been developed using the resources that you just approved several months ago in R 2776609. And it's for para-educators, not teachers.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. I have just one small follow-up. And that training will come to the board for approval?
It certainly could. That wasn't the original plan.
Okay, those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion that the board accept the Intermountain Community Care Foundation grant award of $1,578,000 to implement the Paraeducator Behavior Support Training Project.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, please. Thank you. You know, we know that behaviors have increased in classrooms. It's one of, and like this background says, it's one of the number one concerns of our teachers. And this is our highest risk population with paraeducators and special ed students. We just redid our LRBI manual, and we also know that highly trained professionals working with our students are going to make the biggest impact on student behavior and improving that student behavior. And so this is something that I think is a great opportunity to have the funding to do that, because we do know that special education funding has been challenging. Students that have high needs cost a lot of dollars, and the WPU does not cover the cost of that. So to have this additional support to support our paraeducators, which then in turn supports our teachers, and most importantly supports the improvement of student behaviors, is something that I think that we should get behind as an agency. Thank you.
Member Carey?
Yeah, I would speak in opposition to the motion. I actually had some questions, but the way I read this is, it says that the recommended action is for us to accept a grant award of 1.5 million. We just heard from Director Loveland twice that the reason she's bringing that grant application before this board is because she's required to, because the ask is in excess of $100,000. Well, the grant award that we're seeking to accept now is 1.5 million. But my question is, when did we ever authorize moving forward on the grant? So she's here saying, before I can apply for this grant, I need the board's permission. Well, here, it seems like the grant was already applied for. And that strikes me as, if that's what happened, that strikes me as backwards. The other question I have is, earlier today when we were talking about the ESSA matter, that's a matter currently before the full board, and we were told, well, those matters need to go back to subcommittee to get back to the full board. When I look at this matter, I don't, in the background that was provided, I don't see any indication that this matter was vetted through a standing committee. And so my questions would be, did this matter start in a standing committee, or is it just magically before the board? And if it's the latter, who are the 3 board members that said, we want it before the full board, and skip the subcommittee process? And my other question is, regarding the grant, when did this board vote to authorize pursuing a grant for $1.5 million?
Scott, you have a response?
I do. Would whoever's driving pull up internal policy 03-01, the board's policies? It's not the board's policy, I mean, it's the USBE policies. So Kim Loveland was spot on. She described it very well. So for your review is 0301, which is the grants management policy. The difference is that the grant is a federal grant. So it has different oversight, right? We have to follow particular procedures for a grant. Please go to the paragraph on private grant policies, or I'm sorry, private grant policy. It's both. It's an and or. Either, that's the difference. The difference is this is the policy. This Kim Loveland followed the policy to the T, and we're doing that with IHC right now. So any questions or concerns, and hopefully this helps.
Chair, if I may.
Follow up.
Yeah, as it was indicated that this is a hybrid. And so, yes, it's partially private, but to the extent that there's federal oversight on these funds, I would argue that the provisions that are just captured in Roman numeral 4 may not in its totality reflect the obligations. But even a bigger issue at this point is I still don't know who the 3 board members were to put this matter before this body at this time. I don't know whether this matter was heard in subcommittee where all these questions could have been vetted. And I looked in backup and I didn't see it. And to the extent it was there and I missed it, please let me know. I did not actually see the grant. I didn't see what we agreed to do or not do. So if that was in there and any board members at this table saw it, please let me know. But I didn't see that in backup. And I understand maybe it's one of those, well, we're not going to accept the money unless the board approves the grant, and then we'll get the information and we'll get it to the body. Again, I can't remember an example where that was the process that this body followed. I certainly can't remember any occasion where this body approved anything without the underlying documentation. Where's the signed paperwork? Because that's going to really tell us what our obligation is, and it's going to tell us how these monies are going to be spent. Otherwise, all I know about that is this. I have a background piece of paper saying, well, this is what we're going to be required to do. Well, those terms are typically specified or laid out in the grant. So to the extent that exists, I would ask that it be produced. To the extent I missed it, I'd be happy to take a look at it now.
Okay, I've got Scott with a response. Then I've got member or Vice Chair Wood, member Longacre, member Reel, and member Davis. So, Scott, did you want to?
Yes. So just for the public and the good of the board, this is not a grant that would be subject to federal oversight. If you further go into the policy there, this was established in 2018, so we can certainly relook at it or do that. I'm the grants compliance officer, and so is Sarah Harward, and so the process was followed to the T. Now, if we could go to the backups on the agenda item, I think everything that was raised is in the backups, the whole description of the grant. What we're doing is we're following our policy and our processes to ensure that you as the board, or that before we enter into the agreement with a private company, that we have your permission in accordance with the policy. The aspect of why it didn't go through committee is because we haven't had to do that in the past. There's nothing that this policy, so maybe it's a supersedes, or I don't know. We're open to that aspect of a process, but we feel we're following the process, that there's data or information in the backups that should answer board members' questions. If it doesn't, we can certainly address those. But we would not sign an agreement in accordance with our policies and procedures. Does that help? Or
Yeah, let's keep going. Sure.
The grants compliance officer, Deputy Jones, indicated that the grant application is in backup. If we could call that up, because I wasn't able to find it. So I'm looking for the grant application that was approved apparently by IHC already. So if that document's in backup, I don't know who's driving, but if we could call that up. And again, I apologize if it's there. I really spent time looking for it. Again, I'm not looking for the summary of what is or may not be in the grant application. I'm looking for the grant application, because that will tell us whether there is federal oversight or not. It will tell us what our obligations are. But all I have right now is this summary, this one piece of paper for a $1.5 million grant. But again, I'm not saying that this is true or not true. I'm just saying I don't have any documentation surrounding it. And then to bypass a subcommittee without providing that documentation makes it even more difficult to move forward for me, because as Director Loveland said, and not only her, but the ESSA funding, right? We were told, well, if you want it before the full board, just get 3 board members and bring it back. Okay, well, if we need to do that, let's do it. But this one just bypasses that process with no documentation and ends up before this body. So can we see the grant? I thought that's what was shared by the deputy superintendent, that we have that document. Can we just bring it up on the board so we can see it? And I'll profusely apologize for the misallocation of time, but I couldn't find it. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
Scott?
so we're looking at it right now. There is a technical issue, or that it was allegedly or supposedly loaded, but we have it right here. I'm not sure why the link or the backup is not working. So, but Dr. Voorhees can pull it up and show you, or Kelsey has it. Okay, so I think we just have but yeah, I do understand Board Member Carey's concern, is because, I can see it, but I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened, so.
Yeah, sure.
The document that's going to be pulled up, and hopefully it's the actual application, but was that, so apparently it wasn't backup, but I just couldn't see it, or board members couldn't see it? Who
No,
had?
I don't think I don't know what happened. It didn't load or something, so I don't think any board members can see it. So.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Vice Chair Wood.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of speak to the history of it, and it is in the backup of the agenda, but no, in the background of the agenda memo, there's some history to there. I'm just clarifying. This was an original legislative request. Legislative requests rarely go through committee. They come to the full board during legislative preparation. This was an original legislative request by Member Davis in 2023. It was not prioritized at that time. I brought the request back in the fall of 2024, and instead of it becoming a prioritized item, staff found funding for that to happen through their discretionary funds, or their carryover funds. Sorry, mixed up the term, the carryover funds. So that never had to be prioritized by the board because we found an alternate way to pay for it. But it was approved by the board as one of our legislative items. On September 6th, I removed that from our legislative preparation, and the motion carried with members Davis, Earl, Hart, Hymas, Carey, Norton, Real, Straight, and Wood, with an opposition of member Bogus, to remove it from our legislative requirements and approve the student support carry forward funding to pay for the school behavior support for K through 12. So the legislative item was approved by the full board, but the funding was then defunded by the legislature, and that money was swept. So I appreciate that the board continued to take our priorities from 23, 24, and still try to look for ways to fund this training that is critical for our paraeducators. Thank you.
Member Longacre.
The one time I try to talk, please. No, I want to reiterate what Vice Chair Bollinger said. There is a behavior issue in schools, and with our funding request that we just approved for legislation to have paras in every K through 3rd classroom, this training would be absolutely necessary, and it gives me hope that we are getting this grant, and it's my understanding that we will have control over the training. So I think this is a win-win.
Thank you. Just for your information, Sybil just emailed the documents. Is that right? There's 3 documents. So, and she apologized. So, Member Real.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an outstanding opportunity for Intermountain to be generous enough to give us these dollars that can help improve our classroom experience for our students, especially those with increased learning needs. And I'm grateful that for the staff to have applied for this and received this grant. And I think that, you know, considering we have requested this often, these kind of dollars from the legislature and not been funded, it is outstanding to see a local institution like Intermountain step up and help us still make sure our students are getting all of the care that they need in their classroom. So I'm grateful for that. And with that, I'd like to call the question.
The question has been called. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Let's vote. Again, we are voting to call the question. Scott, as we prepare this motion, go ahead.
So our records indicate that on October 15th, all board members were emailed the application. No, it went to Sybil to be put on the agenda. So if we still need to see the application, which I said we have that, then it's right there. Yeah. So just for consideration as far as your motion. So
we got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board members, are we ready to vote? Okay, let's vote. Call the question.
Member Green is a no.
Thank you, Member Green. This motion fails with 9 in favor, 6 opposed. Remember, this has to be a 10-5. Those opposed being Member Earl, Member Hall, Member Green, Member Hymas, Member Carey, and Member Bogus. So let's go back here. The motion before the board is that the board accept the Intermountain Community Care Foundation grant award of $1,578,000 to implement the paraeducator behavior support training project. Member Davis.
Yeah, I appreciate some of the history behind this. And I also, quite frankly, appreciate the process questions too, because I think that's important to, remind ourselves, because this has been, a couple of years in the making. It actually started initially with some legislative initiatives, and then but anyway, one thing I just wanted to note that wasn't mentioned in the history, and I'll just add this, is that as we were kind of thinking like, what can we do to help in this space as a board? And we had talked about this back during the, when the board approved this legislative, or this, first the legislative request and then the carry forward funding for this. The reason that we had kind of talked about going with this type of model is because our special ed team had recently done a training that was a similar type of a model with special educators, I believe, for paraeducators. But how many, Chair, I just be reminded, but I think like 1,000 people participated in that training, and it was highly successful. So am I remembering that right, or is it wrong? 11,000 paraeducators participated in this training that our staff offered. And I feel like there's so many behaviors out there that if we have one person in each building that can at least come and help mitigate, help support teachers, help with ideas for mitigation and such, that this could really be very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Yeah, so I hats to Member Carey. I actually like it when he does that. I think it makes us a better board. And so I thank him for his stuff. My only concern, if I could speak through the chair to Superintendent Voorhees, is my concern about these trainings is oftentimes they present childhood as a disease as opposed to addressing behaviors. And that was my big concern in making certain that we have control of what our paraeducators are being trained on. The only thing I have reservation about is that we can't offer it to every para. I think that it's definitely needed. Mitigation strategies are needed, responding, de-escalation, all of the things, because when that is all on the classroom teacher, it's almost an untenable situation. And so I support the idea, but I definitely have concerns about the training because some of these trainings don't actually address behaviors, they address ideological frameworks. And so I'm super thankful that we have control of that training and can make certain that it addresses that. Thank you.
Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible, and this is from the document that was just supplied by Sybil via email, is it possible to call up the email from Mary, I assume she's with IHC, to Dr. Voorhees dated October 14th, 2025? And so my question, Chair, if I may. And maybe I'm missing something, but this appears to be a confirmation letter thanking Dr. Voorhees for our education innovation application, training for paraeducators. And it seems to indicate that it was approved. So, two questions on this matter, Chair, that I have, and I don't know who's best situated to address them, but I don't believe I have still been provided with the education innovation application. If it did not appear to be attached in the email that Sybil sent with those 3 attachments. So if that application is out there, I would like to see yes, we would like this grant, here's how we meet your specifications. Is that application, has that been provided? And my second question would be, if we've been approved for the application and there was no caveat saying subject to this board's approval, procedurally, where does that leave us, right? I thought we were here to approve accepting the money as it says in the summary, but I don't see any indication that this board's approval is either necessary or desired. So you have to whisper a little bit lighter. So I don't know who would have that information, but I have those questions on this matter, and then I have some others. But if I may, Chair, those 2 questions. Thank you.
Here's what I'd like to do. Board members, if it's okay, I'd like to take 5 minutes, and we can come back and go through questions again. But I'd like to take 5 minutes if that's okay. I recognize that we're 10 minutes away from lunch. We've spent a significant amount of time on this, but let's make sure we get this right. So can we set a timer for 5 minutes? Thank you. Board members, thank you for that. Public, we thank you for your patience with us. Let's pick up where we left off. We're going to go back to Member Carey. Do we make sure we have a quorum here? I believe we do. So Member Carey, thank you. Or the mic is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I know we have a pending motion to approve this, and so I'd just like to speak to that. And that is that on the merits, I think this is a great proposal. We absolutely would benefit from the funding. To the extent that my concerns about proper process were conflated with the substance of the motion, I don't think this is the right occasion. So I'm going to speak in favor of the motion, but I would ask the chair to consider that there be a discussion on process in this matter when it comes to board approval in the year 1979, and we ride that to move something forward in the year 2020, or in 2023, and we use that to move forward in 2025. But I appreciate the board's patience on it, and thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Yes, we'll look into that and find ways in which we can better be clear for the board so that past requests will be, if there's continual movement on it, can be brought before the board, and we can look at that. So thank you. Board members, the motion then before the board is that the board accept the Intermountain Community Care Foundation grant award of $1,578,000 to implement the Paraeducator Behavior Support Training Project. Let's go ahead and vote. Member Green?
Abstain.
Thank you. That passes. 14 in favor, 1 abstention, and that abstention coming from Member Green. Board members, with that closes out agenda item 5, our consent calendar, and that will move us to agenda item 6. But I would like, lunch is here. I know we just had a break and you probably didn't eat, but let's please take lunch. And then when we come back, if that's okay, Chair of Standards and Assessment Committee, Earl, will jump right back into agenda item 6 right after lunch. Thank you, board members. Let's take 30 minutes.